focus peaking is always a good time. What's up, everybody? This is Josh from Practical Theism. Have you ever taken a look at the state of affairs in online discourse and dialogue? You know, if you haven't yet, you're clearly not online very often because it's everywhere. I mean, just take a look at the recent school shootings and how everyone is blowing up about gun control. Close friends can seemingly become enemies overnight because of a disagreement over politics, religion, or any spectrum of morality and moral issues. So, in light of that, I propose a change. Let's change the way we dialogue online. Let's start having better conversations that foster a relationship rather than ending a relationship. And here is how we're going to do it, all right? Here's what I got for you. 5 tips on how to talk good so people don't hate your guts. Don't take yourself so seriously. I sure don't. So tip number 1, focus on the argument rather than the person making the argument. This is such a key point. Often we feel like just because someone holds a certain position, that de facto makes them a bad person or not smart or whatever. And in that moment, we take that association, we generalize it about the other person. You know, whether they are right or whether they are wrong really isn't the point. The point is that everyone who brings an argument to the table is approaching it from their own experience, their own background, their own education, their own bias, their own understanding. If the argument is incorrect, it is a reflection on the argument. It means it's a bad argument, not the person making the argument. You see, until we can separate the two, we can't really foster a positive dialogue because there will always be negative feelings toward the other person due to the association. So let's focus on the argument rather than the person making the argument, all right? So tip number 2, do not resort to ad hominem attacks. You want a sure way to start a fight, or how to get someone not to like you, or how to ensure that you never will ever change a person's mind? Well, if you want any of those things, go ahead, just use ad hominem attacks. Ad hominem attacks are a logical fallacy that focuses on throwing out personal attacks at a person in attempts to show that the person is wrong, rather than deconstructing the argument to show where it is wrong. Nobody likes to be called names, have their personal integrity attacked, have their intellect attacked, or be personally deflated. So just avoid that altogether. A good way around this? Use the principle of charity. If you immediately feel someone is wrong, assume that you've misunderstood the argument. Focus on where the argument and where you might disagree with it, and dialogue about why you do. Which leads to our next tip. Tip number 3, never deny, seldom affirm, and always distinguish. Thomas Aquinas in the 13th century was known to have said this as a rule to really live by, when engaging in discussion or debate or anything. This blows my mind at how much sense it really makes every time I hear it. It revolutionized my thinking and how to approach discussions with people where my arguments and conclusions differed from theirs. Don't know why, but it did. Not only did this allow me to find common ground in the truth of the other person's arguments, but it also allowed me to focus more closely on the fine distinctions that usually stem from where the arguments differ and really where disagreements form. The idea is this: when you outright deny someone's argument, you are automatically putting enmity between you and the other person. Whereas when you affirm the truths of the argument, well, that you can reasonably affirm, it fosters charity between each other, and distinctions further the conversation rather than allowing it to be cut short, because you're drawing the logic out on a path of discovery, inviting the other person to come with you. The idea is, hey, that's a really great point. I definitely would actually agree with X, Y, and Z, but here's where I might differ, and this is why. What are your thoughts on that? Abraham Lincoln actually said it another way. Quote, "If you would win a man to your cause, first convince him that you are his sincere friend. On the contrary, assume to dictate to his judgment or to command his action, and he will retreat within himself, close all avenues to his head and to his heart." End quote. Gotta love some good old Abe. Tip number 4, ask questions. How to Win Friends and Influence People is an absolutely phenomenal book about human relationships. One of the most intriguing aspects of the book I found was when it talked about how people love to talk about themselves and their experiences. Use that to your advantage in your discussions with people. People relish the opportunity to share what they know and to share about their experiences. I mean, just try it. Try being in a conversation and resisting the urge to bring your own experience into the conversation. You will feel a pull to do it, trust me. The trick in doing this is to find the balance between when to add value to the conversation and when you let them get their thoughts and opinions out. The best way to foster a great conversation isn't focusing on what you know and how you can share that information with someone else. It is actually taking a student's approach and seeing what you can learn from the other person. Now, we do this by asking questions. When you ask questions, you are showing a genuine interest in what the other person has to say. You know, this is starkly different from how most dialogues go, as I'm sure you can imagine, especially online. When someone is just focused on the send-only mentality, where they are just concerned with making sure that you fully know and understand and agree with what they're saying. Have you ever seen that online? Probably never, right? I mean, I just love getting on Facebook and seeing a litany of comments under a hotly debated topic that is just littered with charitable conversation of people genuinely interested in what everyone else has to say. Said no one ever. Solicit feedback for your arguments. People love critiquing and voicing their opinion. Use that not only to bulletproof your own arguments, but to get them involved in further critical thinking on their points. Accept the critiques willingly, whether you change because of them or not. Always seek to improve yourself, and you can only do that when you get feedback. Be the light here. I promise you, you will stand out to all of your friends and peers when you take this approach. Lastly, tip number 5, stay charitable. Do not succumb to the desire to join the negative talk when others do. If someone throws out a personal blow, bless it. If someone is angrily charged in their responses, acknowledge them for their openness and honesty. It is very difficult for someone to continue with negative remarks when they are not returned. Have you ever been in a fight with your spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend, some relationship? How difficult is it to be angry with them when they're not returning negative blow with negative blow? I love you. You're so talented at what you do. I really want to learn more about how you treat people so I can really learn from that. I really want to improve myself. You have a choice. Either continue the negative cycle or pursue the positive cycle. The responses always build on each other, and you will diffuse anger quickly if you can take this approach. On a final note, always, always, always thank the other person for the discussion and the dialogue when it's concluded. This is something I picked up, and it amazes me how few people do this, but how well it is received, especially when it's about a sensitive topic that someone feels strongly about. All right. Weekly challenge here. In your next testy conversation, see if you can apply these tips. I challenge you also, try having a conversation where you let them do all the talking and you just ask questions. Let me know how that goes. Honestly, I strongly believe that if we employ these tips, we will see a shift in a good way with the dialogue online and in our daily conversations. If you haven't already, hit that like button, pound that subscribe button so you can get more of this awesome content, and we'll catch you next time.